Hello, my name is Joshua Jones. I am the hydrologist with the Red Lake DNR, the Red Lake Nation in northern Minnesota. I am a graduate of Bemidji State University. I am currently pursuing my master's degree also at Bemidji State University, and my thesis is, you guessed it, measuring open water lake evaporation at Upper and Lower Red Lake. It's a little outline of what I will be covering in my presentation today. So what inspired me to pursue lake evaporation studies on Upper and Lower Red Lake? There's actually been very little quantitative research that has been done on the lakes themselves. There's been bathtub models that have been put together, but they've been based off of estimations and guesses. So that is something that I would like to try to do, is fill in some of those data gaps. This is a picture of the study area of Upper and Lower Red Lake, as well as the surrounding watershed. It's also known as Misquagamui's-Agagan in the Ojibwe language. A couple of significant facts about Upper and Lower Red Lake: if you combine them, they're a total of 288,800 acres in surface area. They're the 16th largest lake in the United States. They're the largest natural freshwater lake located entirely within Minnesota. They're relatively shallow given their relative size. There's 7 major tributaries that flow into Upper and Lower Red Lake. There's only one outlet on the west end of Lower Red Lake that is controlled by a dam, which also controls the lake level, and they are a significant source of spiritual, cultural, and economic connection for the people of the Red Lake Nation. I took this picture a couple summers ago, and this is Lower Red Lake looking towards the west, and you're looking about half of the total lake size. So you'll notice it's a very large lake, and what's significant about it is the relative shallowness compared to the size. So Lower Red Lake is about 15 to 20 feet average depth throughout the lake, and there's a couple pockets that are 30 feet deep. So for a lake that's so big, it's very, very shallow, and that makes it very unique. The next slide is actually a video that I took at another area that's very unique in Red Lake. It's an area known as the Narrows. It's a small peninsula that extends out into Upper and Lower Red Lake, and what's unique about it is on certain days the waves from both lakes will actually go directly into each other. I think most people watching this presentation are pretty familiar with water budgets, but I'll go over a quick briefing of what they are. They are the net difference between the inputs and outputs of a watershed. Inflows add water to different parts of the hydrologic system, such as precipitation, tributaries, groundwater input from aquifers. Outflows remove water from the watershed, so that would be outflowing rivers, evaporation, evapotranspiration, and groundwater outflow. A balanced watershed would have equal inputs to outputs. Water budgets are impacted by increases and decreases in precipitation and temperature, and they're very susceptible to changes in climate. So what's the importance of a water budget? A water budget would help us to understand the historical movement of water into and out of the watershed on Red Lake, and how these movements can be predicted into the future. With climate change, water availability could be a concern in the future. So the sooner that we could have a more detailed and accurate water budget, the better prepared we could be into the future for any coming changes in that hydrologic cycle. As I mentioned before, there's only been bathtub models that have been put together for the water budget for Red Lake. Those were all based off of estimations and guesses at the time. Since then, we have improved our data set. There's good flow records that have been recorded since the 90s from some of the major tributaries. Since there's only one outlet, we've been able to monitor the outflow with the dam. There's sensors upstream and downstream of the dam continuously monitoring flow. So for the water budget, our biggest inputs and outputs that we were missing is lake evaporation, and we also do not have the groundwater inflow and outflow. This is pictures of a couple of the major tributaries that flow into Lower and Upper Red Lake, the Black Duck River and the Tamarack River. And this is a picture of the dam at the outlet, and the only outlet for Upper and Lower Red Lake, the Red Lake River. The dam controls the lake level, and it also is recording the outflow from a couple of gauges upstream and downstream of the dam. So what is the question I'm trying to answer from my research? There have actually been evaporation studies that have been done in this area, although not the same characteristics of the lake that is Upper and Lower Red Lake. So my question is, can I use similar methodology that was done to get lake evaporation at other lakes at Red Lake? And is the surface lake water evaporation a significant output for Red Lake in the water budget? That's to be determined. And lastly, is the Earth actually round? And I guess if you were to consult the Facebook scientists who went to the University of Facebook, the Earth is actually flat, and vaccines also do not work. How am I going to collect my data? So I installed the tower out on the lake this summer, and the research tower was equipped with all sorts of different sensors. It measured things like temperature, precipitation, wind speed, and direction, and basically all the parameters that I will need for calculating lake evaporation using the energy budget method. So using all the different parameters that I collected from my research tower, I will plug all of those into the equation for the energy budget method to calculate lake evaporation. Basically, the energy budget method is an application of the law of conservation of energy. The energy available for evaporation is determined by considering the incoming energy, outgoing energy, and energy stored in the water body over a known time interval. Under the advice of Dr. Rosenberry, he recommended I go this route for calculating lake evaporation, and he's done a lot of research at Williams Lake, which is a lake that's south of where I'm at in Red Lake, but about a couple of hours. And generally speaking, when someone as knowledgeable as him, as an intelligent, tells you to do something, it's a really good idea to listen to them. All right, so what are my expected results from my research? Phase 1, install the evaporation tower in the lake. Phase 2, Phase 3, become a billionaire. And I really haven't quite decided how I'm going to do that, but I will definitely let everyone know once I do. But my other hopes are that I will be able to actually quantify lake evaporation from Upper and Lower Red Lake and be able to use that data to then calculate a more reliable water budget than what we currently have. And in the long term, I'm also hoping to be able to monitor climate change with my station. I'm hopeful that I'll be able to have this station or something very similar to it deployed out in the lake for many years to come. Just a quick rundown of all the equipment that I am using with my tower. So this is the ClimateView 50 from Campbell Scientific. It's kind of a dual sensor, does air temperature, humidity, precipitation, and kind of a neat feature, it even records lightning strikes and how far away they occur from the station. It's kind of neat to see in a big thunderstorm rolling in how many lightning strikes there actually are. This is the infrared temperature sensor that I use to collect surface lake water temperatures. This is probably the most important sensor on the station. It's the net radiometer. And what it does, it has sensors on the top and bottom that record solar radiation coming down and solar radiation that is reflected back up with the sensors. And the net difference between the top value and the lower value is what is absorbed by the surface. This is the data logger I went with from Campbell Scientific, and one of the selling points for me was I can attach the cellular antenna onto it since it's going to be at a very remote location. I really didn't want to have to go out and collect data from it manually. I wanted to have it sent over a cellular network, and with the extra antenna, it had plenty of signal, and I was able to get my readings on an hourly basis. Initially, I thought it would be a good idea to put a solar light on my tower in case there was any boat traffic that might run into it. We decided that what was probably more likely was it would have attention drawn to it and it would probably get shot up, so ended up taking the solar light off. I'm going to give a quick rundown of the tower installation and deployment from this summer. This was the point that we picked out for the installation. On a windy day, the lakes can get pretty rough and wild, so we tried planning for worst case scenario, and we ended up driving in half-inch rebar into the lake bed, then fit the tower sections over the rebar, and also had it anchored at 3 different points by cinder blocks. Some of the sensors need to be perfectly level to get the most accurate data, so that was pretty tricky, getting the tower centered and then also trying to get all the sensors perfectly level. We had forgotten to take a picture of me next to my tower before we left, so I had to go back and Photoshop a picture of myself next to it. This is a screenshot of some of the data that I was getting from my tower right after I installed it. This is all very new territory for me, and it all just kind of looked like a big mess of numbers when I first looked at it. This is actually a picture of me interpreting the data when I first looked at it. A couple graphs I put together for this presentation. Here's maximum daily temperature, wind speed, another graph of the relative humidity that was recorded at the station. And like I mentioned earlier, this is a graph of the lightning strikes that the tower has recorded, and has nothing to do with my research at all. I just think it's really cool and fun to look at. This is a short video I put together for my tower, so enjoy. I'd like to give a shout out to Dr. Miriam Rios Sanchez, Bemidji State University, who is also my graduate studies advisor and also the reason why I got into hydrology, and also to Dr. Don Rosenberry with the USGS for all of his help and technical advice along the way in getting my research off the ground. And also a shout out to my boss, Shane Bowe at the Red Light DNR. He doesn't like it when I call him my boss, so from here on out, I will now refer to him as my personal life coach. All right, well, that concludes my presentation. I asked that if you have any questions for me to please keep them easy. I really only actually read the cliff notes on lake evaporation.